All right, thank you, Mr. Kapoor.
Sure.
1 o'clock, so let's go ahead and get started. Good afternoon. My name is Michael Dowry, and I have the pleasure of serving as receiver for the city of Chester. We are gathered here today to host the Municipal Financial Recovery Advisory Committee meeting, today being Tuesday, October 24th, 1 p.m. As we call this meeting to order, I want to welcome and acknowledge on behalf of representing the city of Chester, Councilman Will Morgan. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
And on behalf of Governor Shapiro's office and a Deputy Director of Department of Community and Economic Development, Andrew Sheaf. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
And on behalf of Delaware County Council, we are joined by Ms. Kelly Diaz. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And as always, Chief of Staff to this engagement, Mr. Vijay Kapoor, and Executive Assistant on loan from DCED, Mr. Cody Dale. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
All right. Since we last met in September, thank you, Mr. Dale, for getting out today's agenda and circulating public comment, which ended up being none, but anything you want to address or at least remind folks on how to submit their comments?
Sure, yes. Like as you mentioned, haven't received any since the last meeting, so we'd like to encourage the public to continue to reach out to us in this committee. The best way to do so is at our email address, info@chesterreceivership.com. There are also some links through our website, and you can reach out to us through social media on Facebook as well. But again, the best way is through email at info@chesterreceivership.com.
Thank you, Mr. Dill. And we have just our standard agenda today, no presentations, but there are some general updates that will be good for the committee, and always want to make ourselves available to answer any questions. So without further ado, I'd like to kick it over to Mr. Vijay Kapoor to provide an update on the status of the recovery plan.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Mr. Receiver. Thank you for the opportunity to be here again. What I had this afternoon actually is it's not kind of a PowerPoint presentation like we normally do, but just yesterday, the receiver's financial consultant, public financial management, released a kind of a mid-year financial update on the city. It goes through the second quarter of 2023. It is available on our website, on the chesterreceivership.com website. I'm going to show you in a moment where it is, and I think just for the committee, it's probably best if I take you through some of the high points here of that report, and certainly happy to answer any questions that folks have. PFM does these analyses generally on a quarterly basis. You'll see, some of you may see this. There's a couple of these that are on the receiver's website from previous quarters as well. And essentially what it does is takes a high level look at the city's financial condition, takes a cash flow estimate as well, and provides some high level information about some of the taxes and revenues and expenditures that we're seeing. So let me go and share my screen if I can. And what I will do is what you see here is actually the receiver's website. So I will actually show you kind of where to find this document. So the website is chesterreceivership.com for those of you who are interested in finding this information. And you go up to the top here on the bar that says documents, click that. And then if you scroll down, there's a lot of really useful information here on the page. Updates, the recovery plans, some of the status reports that we filed with the court. There's court filings. MFRAC presentations are here as well. And then this information here, and let me just, before I click on that, let me also show you, we also have the city financials. So we have all the check registers here. These are approved by council on at the council meetings. So you can see, just click here. You can see, in August, the checks that were written and the amounts that those were in. So we're posting those as we get them online for the public to see. ARPA expenditures as well as liquid fuels as well. So the financial report that I'm going to talk about today is right here in the middle of the page. It's Q2 2023 financial report PFM. And it's a 5-page document. Hopefully folks read that? Can folks see that okay? Can I get my thumbs? Okay, got enough. Good.
Would you mind zooming in just a bit?
I don't know if I can. Let me kind of see. There we go. Better? Yeah, okay, great. This document again is on the receiver's website and free for public consumption. And as the report talks about, the purpose of this is really to take a snapshot of the city's financial condition through the second quarter of 2023, which ended on June 30th. Then what it does is it provides a cash flow projection for the remaining 6 months of the year based on the information that PFM is able to obtain. And so PFM is using not only the information that comes from the city's financial software program, but also because Gordon Mann, who is really the author of this report, has been here for 3+ years. He has a good sense of revenues and expenditures of sort of his own. And as the city is really kind of working towards recording all of its transactions in the financial system, that information is going to become better as we go along. So the big item I really kind of want to show right now is excuse me one second, is this right here. This is the general fund month-end cash balance, and this is essentially the cash flow report. Clearly what you want to make sure of in a city, in any city, is that you don't fall below the zero line over here, because then you run out of cash. And so this has been an item in particular that the receiver's office has paid very close attention to. What the report projects is that the city will end up this year with approximately $3.1 million in the general fund, according to these projections. It's a little closer to really 3 million than 3.1, but that right here in December is based on the cash flow projections we're seeing right now. It's around $3.1 million. That's effectively kind of where we started in the beginning of the year. This is what we carried over from 2022 into 2023. The DCED $5 million kind of emergency bridge loan over here is why you see those numbers go up here in January. Again, thank you to DCED for that. Looking forward to the next installment of that as well. And then as taxes come in, you'll see how the cash flow grows, because property taxes come in around April, May for municipalities. And then what's happening throughout the rest of the year is you're not getting as much revenue in, and what's happening is you're obviously spending money in payroll and in other things. What you're seeing here in the big projection drop here between September and October is the payback of the DCED loan. We need to pay that money back in order to get it provided back to the city, so that we can kind of move forward and again have enough money to make it through January. An important point that we really need to make here is in reality, even though this amount shows around $3.1 million, the city really has less than $3.1 million in order to spend, because this amount also includes outstanding checks that the city has issued, but just haven't yet been cashed, as well as EIT revenue that can only be used to be put into the city's pension plans. So even though you're looking at 3.1 million, in actuality, we're probably closer to $2.1 million to be able to spend. And that is not a lot of money. That's only a couple of days of city operations. So although it's positive and we want it to be positive, and we need it to be positive, frankly, that's not a huge amount of money that we can just say, okay, we've got $2.1 million that we can spend elsewhere. That money needs to be where it is. That's probably as low as we really want it to be in the fund. Now, the one variable, the one thing that could make this go negative based on our projections right now, is that we, as part of the bankruptcy, well, let me just say this. What could make this go negative is if we don't timely receive the Harrah's revenues and the Covanta revenues that are due to the city. And this is not because the city, it's not because they're not, it's not a matter of the city not being owed those monies. It's a matter of making sure we get it from a lockbox that US Bank currently operates into the city. Prior to filing for bankruptcy, the city had separate lockbox accounts at US Bank where the Covanta and the Harrah's revenues would first go, and then they would be released to the city. There at the moment right now in front of the bankruptcy court is a question, is sort of a legal question as to whether or not the bonds that these revenues were used to pay, at least part of revenues were used to pay, are secured versus unsecured. And so as part of this process, there was an agreement that helped freed up a lot of the cash. But in the interim right now, we're seeing some delays from US Bank in trying to get that money to the city. US Bank had some questions about which accounts some of those monies had to go into. We believe we've resolved those at this point, and again, we believe we're going to be okay this year. But that is the only area, that is an area of concern on our end, again, just to make sure that this money gets through. We have been in contact with US Bank, and again, we're hopeful that this week we're going to be able to get all of that resolved. But in the event that we're not, we've got a major problem. We would be negative and we would run out of cash, and that's not something obviously we want to have happen. And we will make sure that is resolved prior to the end of the year. In terms of just kind of how revenues and how kind of high level revenues and high level expenditures, what we're seeing, the good news for the city has been the earned income tax revenues, EIT revenues, were very strong in Q1 and Q2. Those amounts are not only amounts just from regular EIT, but also earned income tax that is specifically set aside to be placed into pension funds. That's referred to as the distressed pension EIT. And so, what we're seeing is resident revenues are higher for the year. The commuter tax revenues are a little bit flat. I shouldn't say flat, but are around 2%. Part of that also has to do with part of the fact that the resident earned income tax is higher than what we budgeted was because we had budgeted the Chester Upland School District taking a portion of that earned income tax. They haven't done that yet. They're still in the process of doing that. So that money is still coming to the city. So that's obviously from the city's end a positive. But we've accounted for that in the in the cash flow. So that again has been a positive for the city, seeing good earned income tax growth or good earned income tax growth. Same thing with real estate tax revenues, although at a lower amount. We're also ahead of the projected pace about halfway through the year with real estate tax revenues. So all that is factored into the cash flow. A couple of other items here. Business privilege tax, BPT, seems to actually be falling short of what was projected. One issue that our tax collector indicated was that one of the major employers who pays the BPT changed some internal processes so that they have a smaller tax liability. So we're projecting about a $300,000 shortfall in the business privilege tax. Rubbish fees. So this is fees for trash. Those are also a little bit higher than what we budgeted this year. So that's positive. And we're projecting that to be a little bit ahead of schedule, or a little bit ahead of budget by the end of the year. Unfortunately, from an expenditure perspective, the rubbish fee does not fully cover the cost for trash collection in Chester. It's something that over time we do need to have it cover. But at least in terms of on a budgeting perspective, we've got it coming in a little bit higher. The other item of note is that effective September 1st, the city has a 1.5% realty transfer tax. So this is a deed transfer tax. Those monies that's anytime property is sold, it's 1.5% is applied to that transaction. Half of that is sent to the school district, and half of that is sent to us, the city, by the county. We're still trying to figure out exactly how much we think that is going to bring in. We are projecting the tax will bring in about $750,000 over 12 months and around $188,000 this year. We got our first amount from the county, I believe in September. I believe it was an amount of around $27,000. So that $188,000 maybe a little bit too high. We'll see what October brings. But again, it's kind of difficult right now since we're in the since this is a new tax and we don't really have any historical on that right now. Looking at expenditures. This is an area, frankly, where we are looking to kind of improve some of the processes in the finance department. So we have a better, clearer view on that. Certainly with respect to employee health insurance, our salaries, wages. We think that again is coming in at an amount that we had expected. The employee health insurance data, kind of putting aside some of the issues we have kind of with the admin system and that amount in there. What we have been told by our broker is effectively the expenditures are coming in as budgeted, as expected, which again is a positive thing. Healthcare is a very expensive line item, particularly for retiree healthcare. But at least as of this year, we're looking to come in where the budget is. So a couple other items here that are on larger expenditure items that I just want to make note of. The waste management fee. So this is the cost for trash collection. Because that's really set by contract, we're basically projecting what it would cost. So we have that. One item that has come in much higher than we expected was the solid waste disposal fee. So these are tipping fees. So we pay. This is paid to the Delaware County Solid Waste Authority for the trash that is taken from the city's trash collector to the Covanta plant, and also for really bulk trash or additional bulk trash and illegal dumping that the city's Public Works Department also takes to the Covanta plant. So we had budgeted around $850,000 for that. It's looking like it's coming in around $1.263 million. So that's high, and that is certainly something we want to drill into. The accounting support. So we have maintained some assistance from a third party, Productivity, that has stayed on longer than we had budgeted initially. Auditing support is a little bit lower, and that's because the progress with the 2020 audit is going a little bit slower than what was projected. And then the legal fees, including bankruptcy services. Again, this is an area that is costly for the city, and these are fees that are paid not only to the entities that are representing the city, not the bankruptcy council, so not Ballard Spar. That is being paid through the state, but Hangley Aaronchick, which is a firm that is representing the city in the dispute over the secured versus unsecured bonds. And Don Lorcano, which is a firm that has the website and runs the website and does the notice requirements for the city as well, and in the bankruptcy. Those are those fees, and then the additional fees are for the retiree professionals, law firms, actuaries, and financial consultants for the retirees. So that amount obviously is a higher amount. One final area, and this is probably of particular interest to retirees and active employees, is pension contributions. To take a moment about that. So as most of you know, the city makes annual payments into these pension funds that are called minimum municipal obligations, or MMOs. This year, the total combined MMO for 2023 is $14.1 million. $10.6 million of that is going to the police plan, 2.2 into the fire plan, and 1.3 million into the O&E plan. That's basically all non-uniformed employees. And again, the way this works is these contributions are not applied to the 2020 MMOs, but go towards amounts due in prior years. It's still approximately, I think, around $32 million in back MMOs that need to go into those funds, the majority of which need to go into the police plan. So a couple of things over here. I want to show a bit of good news here. Again, this is for police retirees as well as for active officers. When the receiver took over back in June of 2020, there were only a couple of months left of revenues in the police plan to pay for police pensions. And we can see here this year, kind of based on what we're looking at right now and based on what we're projecting around $11.9 million in the police plan by the end of the year. That has to do with, number one, making the MMO payments, and number two, because the distressed pension the distressed pension EIT goes into the police fund, police pension plan. Because we've seen kind of growth in that area, you can see the growth here in the police plan. So that's a positive. Through June of 2023, the city has not yet made its MMO payments to the O&E or the fire plans, but the projection in the cash flow is that the city will do that, and the intention here is to do so, barring some something that none of us are expecting. So again, bit of good news here for the pension plans. Still nowhere near where we need to be. Just I want to be clear about that. But we'll take the small victories where we can get them. That is the update I have here on the city's second quarter financials. Happy to answer questions or go back if anyone in the committee has any.
Thank you, Mr. Kapoor. Opening it up to the committee for any questions.
I have two questions, actually. I probably missed it, but the health insurance expenditures, did that also include OPEB, or is OPEB separate?
No, that's a good question. So the health expenditures, they also include OPEB.
Okay.
So yes, and the way the city does OPEB is it's on a pay-as-you-go basis. So we don't have an OPEB trust, and so it's essentially what OPEB means, for those of you who don't know, is retiree healthcare. But yes, it does.
And then my other question was regarding the issue of the overpayments to retirees due to both the spiking and using the incorrect calculation for a number of years. Those payments, were they, I guess I'm asking, like, what is the status of that? Were those payments clawed back, or is that something that's kind of decided, maybe will be decided in the mediation process? Yeah,
good question. So to answer your question, those were not clawed back. For all but only a handful of employees, they were changed going forward. So the recalculations were made. Those were implemented to all but about, I think, 10 or 12 retirees. So most of those retirees who had the recalculations, those were enacted, and they're also being enacted for individuals who are retiring. That was not clawed back. The question about kind of what to do, regarding that is going to be part of the mediation with the certainly with the retirees. So no further update on that, but that is certainly out there. Is that issue is going to have to be resolved through this bankruptcy process.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Diaz. Mr. Sheaf or Councilman Morgan, any questions? All right.
I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kapoor, if you wouldn't mind touching on the balance, the projected year-end balance of 3.1 million thereabout, that does not include or does include outstanding checks that are in float and some payables there. That's higher, if I'm not mistaken, higher than what was originally projected for 2023. Would you be able to speak to the work of Hangley Aronchick and how that issue with the securitized debt, how that impacted cash flow this year?
Yeah, so that's a good point, right? So folks may be seeing legal fees and saying, okay, well, those seem high. Like, what's going on over there? What Hangley Aronchick has done on behalf of the city, and again, this is from the city's perspective, is there was approximately $3.5 million of debt service that would have gone to Preston Hollow, who owns the city's debt. And through the filings of Hangley Aronchick, as well as through some of the mediation that Hangley participated in, and in conversations with the trustee and the bondholders, was able to free the money up. So the city has not made the $3.5 million in debt service payment to Preston Hollow. If it did, the cash flow would have looked different, right? You would subtract that amount, and we would have run negative. And also, again, importantly, in the beginning of the year, because much of that money, the Covanta and the Harrah's revenue, was tied up in the lockbox, based on their ability to negotiate a kind of interim settlement with the bondholders and the trustee, that money was able to be released, which again allowed us to continue to operate. So the question of whether or not we will need to pay that amount, that debt service, next year, again, is in front of the bankruptcy court right now. Both sides have submitted their legal documents. That's sitting with the court. There's no argument that's scheduled for that. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we'll know what that means for 2024. But their help there was invaluable in terms of making sure that we didn't run out of money this year.
Thank you for that. And you mentioned the recent filings. It's something I want to transition into, but if I could just make one point before we go there. Operating at levels of 2 or 3 million for a city of this size, for a budget of this size, is not where we need to be. Best practices would be 2 to 3 months in reserves and fund balance as you operate throughout the year. Looking at the city's cash flow projection for 23, you'll see that we were only there for the summer months, maybe May to August, functioning at a level that would be somewhat comfortable. But knowing that it was going to evaporate over the next few months. So just want to point out that while 2 to 3 million may be seen as okay, that we're not, the city is not insolvent and completely out of money, it is a far cry from where we should be, according to best practice and GFOA and others. Mr. Kapoor, you mentioned the recent filings in the bankruptcy court. Was there anything else you wanted to share with the financial report, or could we transition into providing a general update on recent filings in bankruptcy?
Yeah, so I will just one thing really quick, Mr. Receiver, just to put some numbers to what you had said regarding the cash flow, or the kind of the amount in the general fund that you want to have at the end of the year. So the receiver's right. You want basically 2 months of revenues or expenses in there. So for this city, you would want that amount to be around $9.1 million, right? So us being down really closer to 3 or 2.1, if you think about it, is about a third of where we would want to be, a third to a quarter of where we would really want to be for best practices. So again, just trying to put that into some context. Couple other filings. So transitioning over to the bankruptcy update, we have started there have been a kind of a flurry of filings recently, a couple areas that I just want to make note of and give folks a little bit of a perspective as to what else may be coming. First off, as most of you know, when there is, as part of the bankruptcy process, when a bankruptcy Chapter 9 matter is filed, much of the litigation or grievances or other things that involve the city, assuming that the city is kind of on the receiving end of that, are stayed. It's called a bankruptcy stay. As part of that, both tax appeals against the city, as well as the grievances, mostly from the Fraternal Order of Police, were stayed. And so recently we filed 2 motions. Number one is to lift the stay from most of the tax appeals with the court, essentially allowing those to move forward so that the city would be able to get a sense of like, okay, what is our liability over here? I want to be clear, it's not that the city will pay those amounts. It is really more at this point to just understand what those amounts are. City says it's this amount, property owner says it's that amount. You have to figure out kind of what the answer is, and that will clearly have an impact on revenues. With respect to the grievances, the FOP grievances, we also filed a motion to lift the stay on most of those grievances, so that those could go forward as well. And again, we can kind of continue the process. And the same idea is there. We're not looking to make any payments for those, but really trying to, the term in bankruptcy is referred to as liquidate. But it's basically trying to understand like what the city might be on the hook for. And then finally, significantly, the city also, or the bankruptcy counsel for the city filed what's referred to as a motion to set a bar date. The bar date is the date by which anyone who believes they have a claim against the city needs to file it with the city. And this is with there will be notice requirements once this is done, and that'll be posted in the newspapers as well. And what the bar date again essentially says that if you have a claim against the city, you need to file it within this certain period of time, or else you are barred from moving forward with your claim. The city filed the motion to set the bar date, so the bankruptcy court is going to be the one who's going to set the bar date. That the court sets it. We have started the process to ask the court to do so, and that motion was filed, I believe, last week. And I believe there will be a hearing next Wednesday in front of the bankruptcy court in order to set the bar date motion. So once the bar date is set, then notice is generally sent out, and again, claimants need to go in and make their claims. So those 3 are pretty, again, kind of significant aspects of that. And again, we're waiting on the court's ruling regarding whether or not the debt is secured or not secured.
Thank you for that, Mr. Kapoor. Does anyone on the committee have any questions about the federal process and some of the recent filings there? None. We'll continue on. All right. Well, Mr. Kapoor, you've been on such a roll. I want to ask you to kind of capture the next 3 to 6 months of what we're seeing in the timeline between the release of the city's budget, and I believe budget hearings may start on November 8th. We have the release of the number. We have a plan of adjustment coming together. Could you just give a general sense of what the next 3 to 6 months may look like?
Yeah, so again, those of you who've been following this, can be forgiven if you've been wondering what folks have been up to over the past couple of months, because it has been quiet, at least publicly. There's a couple of things that will be coming down the pike that I think are important, and certainly with both with the city's budget as well as with the bankruptcy process, I think are going to start to move certainly faster than they have been. the bankruptcy process kind of has its own pace. But a couple of items that will be of note. The city obviously needs a 2024 budget, in the process of working on that now. Also, and that has to be passed before the end of the year. There's a cycle there that the budget needs to be introduced. We understand that the first hearing, at least in front of City Council, would be on November 8th. So we have that to work on. The other item that the receiver noted was, what we referred to as the number, which is the baseline amount that we believe that the city needs to operate in a way that provides an adequate level of vital and necessary services in the best interests of the residents. So we are continuing to work on that. We hope to have that pulled together certainly by the end of the year here, because that's going to be used for us as a guide in the conversations that we will be having with retirees, with unions, with other parties, other creditors, and other public entities out there, so that we have a better sense of again what we believe that we really need to be able to spend in Chester in order to provide again an adequate level of vital and necessary services. So that's going on. As part of the bankruptcy process, at the end of the day, what needs to go before the court is something we refer to as a plan of adjustment. That's kind of like an Uber recovery plan that kind of sets the stage for the city's recovery. That is something that the court has to approve. Hopefully it's something we can get a consensus agreement on. But again, a lot of the conversations we're having in mediation, that we will have in mediation, will go to inform that plan of adjustment. And again, that is something that we really do want to get out next year, because that's important to do, and that will at least provide some sort of path for finality of getting Chester out of bankruptcy. We are next year, concerned at the end of next year with ARPA funding running out, that the city's financial cliff is very real, and we want to move in all due course and due speed to try and get these things resolved. So I anticipate starting conversations with some of the other parties towards the end of this year with the bar date motion. That will help us get a sense of what is again out there that perhaps we have overlooked, don't know about. These different areas, even putting aside city operations, right? Because there's the whole operation of a city that's going on at the same time here. All of these things are starting to come together, and I think we're going to have a better sense of time frame and really more substantive and meaningful conversations starting, in the next couple of months.
Well, thank you again, Mr. Kapoor. Does anyone on the committee have any general questions about the timeline or upcoming events? All right, hearing none, thank you for that. And Mr. Kapoor, I think we'll let you off the hot seat for now and continue on with the meeting. I just want to mention, in addition to everything that's already been shared, two general updates. One is just a constant reminder to visit the city's website to take a look at the vacancies. Continue to recruit for several significant positions in the city. It's first who, then what, right? So just trying to continue to build out the team and advance. Yeah, I stole your line, Mr. Kapoor. Advance and continue to move forward. The second item, I want to give a thank you to the Access Center and Department of Environmental Protection, DEP. This past Saturday, they hosted a meeting to discuss the environmental justice policy. Between now and November 30th, DEP is accepting public comment on the environmental justice policy. And I think it's very important for folks to reach out and review the policy and provide their feedback. Mr. Dale, I'm going to ask that you take, and if you don't have this copy, take some of the information that was released by DEP and send it out to our distribution list, and so that everyone is aware. There are several more in-person meetings and virtual meetings scheduled between now and November 30th, but there's also the opportunity to submit comment through their website, email, telephone, etc. So we'll get those instructions out to everyone, and appreciate your participation. Before we move on, I guess I'll open it up to the committee. Does anyone have any questions for me? Hearing none, does anyone on the committee have any advice, any direction, anything you'd like to share with us or with the public at large? Mr. Kapoor, it sounds like you.
Just one other item, and I'm sorry to do this. Just, you know, the other item out there that I think folks may be wondering about is the litigation in front of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court regarding the plan modification. Still haven't heard anything from the state Supreme Court. That argument was done in May. You know, just to give a perspective, sometimes it's how long things take. You know, we filed that plan modification on November 8th of last year, and we're coming up in 2 weeks to November 8th of 2023. So hopeful that we'll hear something from the court. Understand that it's kind of out of our hands on this, but there hasn't been any movement or decision on that as well.
Well, thank you, Mr. Kapoor. Speaking of November, we are scheduled to meet again on November 14th at 1 p.m. Unless especially convene for another matter or we need to punt to the second meeting in November. We will resume at that time, November 14th at 1 p.m. Thank you all for participating here today, and have a great day.